My sister said, "The best wedding gift would be you disappearing from this family forever." My parents agreed, so I sold the hangar home and pulled the plug on the wedding money. What I left in the empty house shocked them. Hey Reddit! Every other Sunday, my parents host dinner at their hangar home in a gated fly-in community outside Austin. Private runway, HOA that acts like a small government. The kind of place where grown men treat a Cessna like a personality. Dad's a retired county public works lifer. Mom used to run a daycare until my sister hit middle school, and suddenly parenting became a single-player game. That player was never me. I'm Cade, 33 male, aircraft maintenance compliance manager for a major cargo carrier out of San Antonio. My entire job is documentation, audits, and making sure nobody cuts corners on aircraft that carry 40 tons of freight at 500 miles per hour. I took Mom's maiden name at 18 because I wanted something that was mine. Remember that instinct. It comes back later. That Sunday, I'd driven up after a brutal week, FAA audit prep, 2 write-ups on a 767, and a conference call with corporate legal that lasted 4 hours. I walked in, grabbed a Dr. Pepper from the fridge, and sat down at the table where Lennox was already holding court. My sister works brand partnerships at a marketing agency in Austin, which means she gets paid to make things look better than they are. She's terrifyingly good at it. Could reframe any situation, so she's the hero and you're the problem, and she'd do it with a smile that made you feel crazy for noticing. Her fiancé Kellen sat next to her, junior loan officer at a regional bank, had his pilot's license for about 8 months and talked about the aviation world like he'd landed on a carrier deck instead of a grass strip in a rental. Nice enough guy on the surface. Zero depth underneath. I mentioned I'd just been tapped to lead the compliance team for our carrier's new regional hub expansion. 12 aircraft, new maintenance facility, full regulatory approval process. It was the biggest thing I'd worked on in my career. Dad grunted. Mom said, "That's nice, honey," in the same tone you'd use if someone told you they found a quarter in the couch. Lennox set her fork down. "You know what would make my wedding absolutely perfect?" She looked right at me. Not angry, not heated, calm, rehearsed. "If you just disappeared from this family, forever, that's the only gift I want from you, Cade." I waited for the correction. The Lennox, that's enough. The uncomfortable laugh, something. Dad reached for his glass of sweet tea. Mom kept cutting her brisket. Neither looked up. Neither said a word. "I'm dead serious," Lennox continued. "You make everything weird. You show up, talk about work nobody cares about, suck the energy out of every room, and then act confused when nobody's impressed. Just go, please." "Lennox," I started. Mom's hand came up. "Your sister is getting married, Cade. Could you not make this about you? Just once?" I wasn't making it about me. I'd said 12 words about work before Lennox detonated. "Always the job," Dad muttered. "Never family, never what matters." I looked at the 3 of them. Mom had already turned back to Lennox. Dad was studying his plate. Kellen was examining his fingernails, like they contained state secrets. I stood up. Didn't raise my voice, didn't slam anything. "Appreciate the clarity," I said. Took my jacket off the back of the chair, walked to the front door, and left. Nobody followed, nobody called out. The screen door closed behind me, and the conversation inside resumed before I reached my truck. Through the window, I could see Lennox already pulling up something on her phone, Mom leaning over her shoulder, both of them lit by the warm kitchen light like I'd already been edited out. The drive back to San Antonio took 53 minutes. I merged onto the highway with both hands on the wheel, and my brain went quiet. Not anger. Anger is reactive. This was something older. I knew what it was. The last piece of evidence had just landed on a pile that had been growing for decades. I spent those 53 minutes running calculations, not emotional calculations, actual numbers. Because here's the thing Lennox didn't know, and my parents had apparently forgotten. When I turned 21, Dad added both me and Lennox to the deed on the hangar home, tenants in common, each owning 25%. Dad explained it as estate planning. Smart move for inheritance. Real dumb move when one of your kids decides to cash out. The property, a 2,800 square foot hangar home with attached T-hangar, direct taxiway access, and a lot on the air park's premium row, had been appraised 18 months ago for insurance purposes at $785,000. My 25% was worth $196,250. They wanted me gone. Fine. But gone has a price tag. I gave myself 2 weeks before making any move. Not to calm down, to build a case file. Deed records from the county clerk. Property tax history. The HOA covenant package, all 63 pages of it, including the transfer review process that kicked in whenever ownership changed hands. I pulled up Lennox's social media too. Not to stalk, to catalog. She'd been posting wedding details for months. Venue was a converted barn estate outside Dripping Springs, capacity for 220 guests. She'd posted the deposit receipt, $8,500 non-refundable, like it was a flex. Total wedding budget looked like $52,000, mostly funded by mom and dad's savings. The same savings that would need to cover buying out my share of the property if they wanted to keep the house. Then I met a real estate litigation attorney out of Austin. Found him through a colleague whose ex-wife had tried to block a property sale during their divorce. He was mid-50s, had a voice like gravel, and decorated his office with framed photos of his dogs instead of diplomas. I liked him immediately. He confirmed what I already suspected. As a co-owner, I could petition for a partition sale under Texas Property Code, Chapter 23. If they couldn't buy me out at fair market value, the court orders a sale. Not fast, 4 to 6 months minimum, but legally bulletproof. The HOA transfer process would add friction, not a barrier. I retained him that afternoon. I also went to 2 family events in that window. Not because I wanted to, because people who are comfortable mistreating you will keep doing it on camera if they don't think anyone's watching the tape. The first was a wedding planning brunch at mom and dad's. Lennox had invited 6 of her friends, plus Kellen's mother. I showed up with a gas station coffee because I knew there'd be nothing there for me. I was right. She'd set the table for exactly the number of guests minus 1. No chair, no place setting. She grabbed a folding chair from the garage, wedged it at the corner where it half blocked the kitchen doorway. I sat there for 90 minutes while she walked everyone through the wedding timeline, the seating chart, I wasn't on it, and the bridal party rolls. I wasn't in the bridal party, wasn't even listed as family seating. She'd put me at a table in the back with Kellen's college roommates. Nobody commented. Mom beamed through the whole thing like her daughter had just cured cancer. The second event was worse. Dad hosted a Saturday cookout for Air Park neighbors. Burgers, brisket, the works. The HOA board president was there. So were maybe 15 other residents. Standard Air Park culture. Everyone's an expert, everyone has opinions, and the runway is the only thing they actually agree matters. Lennox used the opportunity to corner me near the hangar while Dad was flipping patties and entertaining the board president with a story about a drainage culvert project from 1997 that nobody asked to hear. I need you to transfer your share of the house to me and Kellen, she said, keeping her voice low enough that nearby conversations covered it. Dad said he'd talk to you about it, but since he hasn't, I'm asking directly. Transfer it? For what? For the family. Kellen and I are going to move in eventually. We need the ownership clean. Clean meaning my name off the deed. It's not like you use the hangar. You don't even fly. I own 25% of a property worth close to $800,000, Lennox. You're asking me to hand over $200,000 because it's convenient for your timeline. Her eyes went flat. That was the real Lennox. The one behind the Instagram filters and the brunch invitations. Cold, calculating. Used to getting what she wanted because she knew exactly who to push and how hard. You're being difficult, she said. As usual. I'm being accurate. As usual. She walked away. 30 minutes later, Mom pulled me aside near the runway fence and told me I was creating tension and that I should think about what's best for the family. I told her I was thinking about exactly that and left. That night, I emailed my attorney, green light, draft the buyout offer. Let's start the clock. The clock started. They just didn't hear it ticking yet. Lennox threw her engagement party at the Air Park's community pavilion, a covered structure near the runway threshold that residents could reserve for events. She'd gotten an event permit, roped in a caterer, strung up Edison lights, and hired a photographer. Every angle was a photo op. Every moment was a potential Instagram story. About 80 people showed up. Air Park residents, friends from Austin, Kellen's bank colleagues, extended family. A King Air taxied past during the speeches, which Lennox handled by pausing dramatically and saying, "Even the planes are celebrating," which got a laugh from everyone except the pilot. One of Dad's brothers drove down from Dallas, the kind of guy who'd never called me once, but had strong opinions about everything I did. I came in khakis and a button-down. Understated. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to close a chapter. The photographer arranged a family shot near the pavilion's stone wall. Mom and Dad center, Lennox and Kellen to their right, me on the far left, half out of frame. The photographer actually asked me to scoot in, and Lennox said, "He's fine where he is." Click. Last family photo. They didn't know it yet. After the photo, I found Lennox near the dessert table, laughing with 2 friends about some influencer partnership she'd landed. "Got a minute?" I said. She excused herself with an eye roll. We walked toward the edge of the pavilion, away from the crowd. The runway stretched out behind us, empty in the evening light. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner," I told her. "About disappearing." I watched her face change. Interested, almost hopeful. You were right. I'm going to do exactly that. Good, she said. Honestly, Cade, it's better for everyone. You've always been, but I'm taking what's mine on the way out. That hope died fast. What does that mean? You'll find out this week. I walked back to the party, stayed another 40 minutes, shook Kellen's hand, said goodnight to the HOA president, who was complaining about someone's unapproved hanger paint job. Last time I'd ever shake that man's hand. Last time I'd ever say goodnight to any of them. Monday morning, my attorney sent the certified letter to my parents' address. Return receipt requested. Formal buyout offer, $196,250 for my 25% share. 60-day response window. If they couldn't or wouldn't buy me out, I'd file for partition under Texas Property Code, Chapter 23. The letter arrived Wednesday. I know because the return receipt came back with Dad's signature, written so hard the pen almost tore through the card. Dad called 14 times between Wednesday evening and Thursday morning. I let everyone go to voicemail. The messages escalated from confused to angry to threatening. The last one was just heavy breathing and you've lost your mind, son. Mom texted, "This is cruel and you know it. Call me." Lennox went nuclear within hours. She created a group chat called Family Crisis with every relative, family friend, and Air Park neighbor she had a number for. Her version, Cade is trying to force the sale of our parents' home out of jealousy over my wedding. He's always been resentful. He's trying to destroy our family because he can't stand not being the center of attention. She backed it up with screenshots. Cropped, of course. A text where I'd written, "I'm done trying to explain my legal rights to people who don't care," got trimmed to just, "I'm done," and people who don't care. Made it look dismissive rather than exhausted. Another where I'd told Dad, "The offer is fair and you know it," got cropped to "you know it." 3 words that, stripped of context, sounded threatening. She didn't need to lie. She just needed scissors. Then came the social quarantine. She started telling people, not loudly, just quietly in side conversation, that she was genuinely worried about Cade's stability, and that for everyone's safety, it was better not to engage with, not an accusation, a concern. The kind of thing that makes people cut you off and feel good about it. 3 neighbors who'd been friendly with me for years stopped returning texts within a week. She left out, naturally, the part where she asked me to permanently disappear from the family. She left out the decades of being treated like a line item nobody budgeted for. She left out the folding chair at the brunch and the seating chart that put me with strangers at her wedding. Dad's brother called 9 times in one day. I answered the 9th because I was curious what a man who hadn't spoken to me since 2019 had to say about my life decisions. "You're tearing this family apart," he said, voice thick with righteous anger. "When's my birthday?" Silence. "It's March 14th. You've never once called. Not on that day, not on any day. You're not calling because you care about me. You're calling because Lennox told you to. We're done here." I hung up. One of my aunts sent me a 4-paragraph email calling me the most selfish person to carry our family name. This from a woman who once refused to lend Mom her KitchenAid mixer for Thanksgiving because she didn't trust other people's outlets. One of my cousins texted me a Bible verse about honoring thy father and mother. I texted back Colossians 3:21. "Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged." He left me on red. The funniest part was the sudden surge of interest in my existence. These people had my number all along. Nobody used it for birthdays, holidays, or anything that actually mattered. But threaten a house sale and suddenly everyone's a family counselor. Funny how that works. Nobody's number one until they're the one with leverage. The Air Park drama was a separate front. Lennox convinced 2 board members that I was unstable and might do something reckless with the property. Classic concern trolling. The HOA president called me directly. "I've received some communications from your sister regarding the property on Taxiway Charlie. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about community standards. I'm exercising a legal right as a co-owner. My attorney has filed proper notice. If the board has specific concerns about the transfer process, they can put them in writing and send them to my lawyer." That shut it down. The president was a retired airline captain who respected chain of command communication. He didn't want legal heat, but Lennox wasn't done. She filed a complaint with the HOA alleging I'd violated the property maintenance covenant by failing to contribute to upkeep costs. Complete nonsense, since property taxes and HOA dues were paid through a shared account Dad managed, and my 25% had been auto-drafted from my bank for years. I had every receipt, 12 years of them. My attorney sent the HOA a 4-page response with documentation attached. Complaint dismissed in a week. Then the board tried something creative. The president sent a notice of a proposed special assessment for runway resurfacing, $4,200 per property, due within 60 days. My attorney requested the HOA's financial records under Texas Property Code 209 and found the runway fund was already fully funded. He sent a letter pointing out that a targeted assessment without a membership-wide vote violated the HOA's bylaws, and that selective enforcement against properties under court-ordered sale constituted interference. The assessment disappeared from the next agenda without explanation. Then came the gate access issue. Lennox somehow convinced the air park's security company to deactivate my gate code, claiming I was no longer a resident. I drove up one Saturday to check on the property, my legal right as a co-owner, and the gate wouldn't open. Had to call my attorney from the car. He called the HOA management company. My access was restored within 2 hours, along with a formal warning to whoever had authorized the deactivation. Meanwhile, the 60-day buyout window was ticking. Dad's attorney, a general practice guy from Round Rock, who mostly handled wills and fender benders, sent my lawyer a letter arguing the buyout price was inflated and that I should accept $120,000 in the interest of family harmony. My attorney's response was 3 sentences. The appraisal was conducted by a licensed independent appraiser. The offer stands at fair market value. If your clients cannot meet the buyout, we will file for partition. 2 weeks of silence. I used the time productively, filed every document my lawyer needed, built a timeline of ownership contributions going back to when my name was added to the deed. The kind of meticulous, boring work that wins court cases. Day 58, Dad called my attorney directly. Tell him we'll pay. We just need more time. 6 months. My lawyer relayed it. I thought about it for exactly 1 evening. No extension, I told him. They've had the deed for 12 years. They had 60 days notice. File the petition. The petition for partition sale was filed on a Tuesday in Travis County District Court. Filing fee, service costs, billable hours, it was adding up. But the math still worked. Even after legal fees, commissions, and closing costs, my cut would clear $170,000 minimum. Combined with my savings, that was a new start. The court assigned a commissioner to evaluate whether the property could be physically divided. You can't split a hangar home in half, and scheduled a hearing for 8 weeks out. Lennox's wedding was in 5 months. The hearing got pushed back 3 weeks. Commissioner had a scheduling conflict, then the court docket was packed and bumped us twice. Dad's attorney filed a motion to delay, arguing undue hardship. The judge gave them 2 extra weeks to present financial alternatives. They presented nothing. Just a letter from Dad saying the house had sentimental value and that selling it would destroy the family. The judge ordered the sale. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The system worked. The documentation held. Now came the hard part. Actually getting the thing sold with Lennox, doing everything short of setting it on fire. My attorney recommended a realtor who specialized in air park properties across Central Texas. She'd sold 11 hangar homes in 3 years and understood the HOA transfer process inside out. Lennox tried to torpedo the listing from day one. First, she called the realtor directly, claiming I didn't have authority to list the property. The realtor asked for the court order. I provided it. Done. Then, Lennox posted in the air park's residents' Facebook group, a move that backfired spectacularly. She framed the sale as a hostile act by a disgruntled family member and asked neighbors to discourage outside buyers. 2 residents screenshot the post and sent it to the realtor, who forwarded it to my attorney, who added it to our file as evidence of interference with a court-ordered sale. The HOA president called an emergency board meeting to address community concerns about the listing. I attended. Lennox was there. Mom was there. Dad refused to come. The boardroom was a converted office in the air park's main hangar building. Fluorescent lights, folding tables, stale coffee. 8 board members sat behind a long table, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. About 20 residents in the gallery, some genuinely concerned, most just there for the drama. This one had attracted a crowd. The president opened with a statement about property rights and community standards. Then he turned to Lennox. You've raised concerns about this sale. Can you specify what covenant violations you're alleging? Lennox had prepared. She stood up with a folder, printed emails, screenshots of text between her and me, selectively edited, a character reference from her agency boss describing her as a stabilizing presence in her family, and framing the sale as retaliatory conduct, professional letterhead, pure spin. I let her finish. Then I stood up, opened my own folder, and placed 4 documents on the table. Deed copy showing my legal ownership, court order mandating the sale, 12 years of HOA dues payment receipts from my bank account, and the HOA's own covenant, section 14.3, which states, no board action shall impede or delay a court-ordered property transfer. I'm not asking the board's permission, I said. I'm informing the board that this sale is proceeding under court order. If anyone interferes, they're obstructing a judicial mandate. My attorney is available to discuss that further. The president looked at Lennox, looked at me, looked at the court order. The board has no grounds to intervene, he said. The transfer review process will proceed normally once a buyer is identified. Next agenda item. He started to move on like it was settled. Lennox couldn't stand that. You can't just... This isn't about covenants. He's not family. He's an inconvenience we tolerated. And now he's leveraging a piece of paper to... The room went dead quiet. A guy in the back stopped chewing. 20 people just watched her say the things she was supposed to keep inside. The president stared at her. 2 board members exchanged a look. A woman in the third row put her hand over her mouth. Lennox heard it. Heard the silence. Her mouth closed. She sat down without another word. I didn't react. Didn't need to. She just said out loud what my whole family had been doing quietly for 19, and she said it in front of witnesses. Every tool in her kit, and she blew it with her own mouth. The realtor listed the property the following Monday. Professional photos, aerial drone shots of the runway access, 3D virtual tour. She priced it at $779,000 because air park buyers negotiate like it's sport, and she wanted urgency without looking desperate. Before the first showing, the realtor needed me on site to walk the property for photos. I pulled up to the gatehouse and the guard, new kid, maybe 22, told me he'd been instructed not to let me through. Wouldn't say by whom. I didn't raise my voice. I parked in the visitor lot, called the HOA property manager, then my attorney, then sat in my truck and waited. 45 minutes. The guard kept glancing over like he expected a scene. I was reading an airworthiness directive on my phone. My lawyer's call resolved it. The guard waved me through, looking relieved. I nodded at him on the way past. No hard feelings. He was just the tool someone else picked up. The first showing was that Thursday. Lennox showed up uninvited, parked her car across the driveway, and told the prospective buyer, a retired airline captain from Houston, that the house had foundation issues and the HOA was under investigation. The realtor documented everything and called my attorney. He filed for a temporary restraining order and injunction blocking Lennox from contacting buyers or interfering with showings, granted within a week. Lennox framed it to her group chat as Cade got a restraining order against his own sister, which technically wasn't wrong but left out the part where she'd been committing tortious interference with a court-ordered sale. Context is for people who want the truth. Lennox just wanted a story she could spin. Second showing went smooth. Third one almost didn't. The buyer was a married couple. He loved the property. She was ready to write a check. Then the wife got a DM on Instagram from an account she didn't recognize. Lennox had found her through the showing schedule and sent a message about how the property was the center of an active family dispute and that purchasing it would make them complicit in displacing elderly parents. The wife panicked. Called the realtor at 9 p.m. The realtor spent 40 minutes walking her through the court order. The couple stayed in, but it was close. My attorney added the screenshots to the interference file. The realtor told me later that if they'd backed out, the court could have ordered another listing cycle and dragged this into Lennox's wedding month. By the end of the month, we had 2 offers, one at asking price, one at $760,000. The realtor recommended the full price offer, a couple relocating from Colorado. He was an aerospace engineer. She ran a remote consulting business. They had a Cirrus SR-22 and wanted taxiway access. They passed the HOA transfer review in 19 days. Clean background. Paid the $2,500 fee without complaint. No objections from residents. Closing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. Then the title company found an old mechanics lien from a contractor who'd done hangar door work 8 years ago. Dad had paid the guy in cash and never got a lien release filed. Nobody's fault, just boring paperwork friction. Took 11 days to track down the contractor, get a signed release, and record it with the county. 11 days of Lennox probably hoping the whole thing would collapse on a technicality. Closing happened on a Thursday afternoon in late October at a title company in Austin. Separate signing at my attorney's office that morning. No need to see my parents. The title company handled coordination. After fees, commissions, and the mortgage payoff on what Dad still owed, net proceeds came out to approximately $168,000 per share. Less than the raw quarter, because of Dad's mortgage balance and closing costs. Still life-changing money for me? Devastating math for them. Here's what the numbers did to Lennox's wedding. The $52,000 budget was funded primarily from Mom and Dad's savings. Those savings were now needed to secure housing. They ended up renting a 3-bedroom outside Pflugerville. No runway, no hangar, no air park address. The deposits Lennox had already put down, venue, caterer, florist, photographer, were mostly non-refundable. She scrambled to cancel what she could and lost about $11,000 in deposits total. The dream wedding evaporated. 200 guests became 50. The converted barn estate became Kellen's parents' backyard. The designer dress became something off a rack at a bridal outlet. I learned most of this through the realtor, who heard it through the air park grapevine. I didn't go looking for updates. They just arrived. 2 days after closing, I drove to the hangar home one last time. The new owners weren't moving in until the following week. The house was empty, cleaned out, echoing. I walked through every room like I was doing a final walkthrough before signing off. Kitchen, where I'd been ignored. Living room, where family photos featured Lennox prominently, and me as background noise. The hangar bay where Kellen parked a rental plane twice, acting like he owned the place. On the kitchen counter, I placed a black 3-ring binder, heavy duty, the kind you'd use for an FAA audit file. Lennox ran on optics. I ran on receipts. The front cover had a single label, printed clean. Exit invoice, prepared by Cade. First page was formatted like an FAA non-compliance finding because I'm petty in a professional way. Finding, requested permanent removal of family member. Root cause, explicit directive from Lennox, enabled by both parents. Corrective action, exit plan executed, assets liquidated per court order. Status, closed. Behind it were 6 tabbed sections, deed and appraisal records, the buyout offer they refused, and the lowball counter I rejected. Court filings, including the TRO, the full HOA interference log with every timestamp, and a tab I called The Receipts. 23 entries spanning 19 years. Each one dated, each one factual. No editorializing. Just a ledger of every time I'd been sidelined, excluded, or erased. Documented the same way I'd document a recurring maintenance deficiency on a 767. Last page was 3 centered lines under the words, "You asked for this." Cause, "The greatest gift is if you disappear from our family forever." Effect, partition sale, $779,000 property liquidated, wedding budget eliminated. Status, gift delivered. Beside the binder, I placed an envelope containing a handwritten letter. Edited down the way I edit audit reports. Cut everything that isn't load-bearing. You told me to disappear. I did. You refused the buyout, so the house sold. You funded a wedding instead of honoring a legal obligation, so the wedding collapsed. Every consequence in this binder goes back to a decision you made, not me. Don't look for me. Don't call. Don't send relatives. This is what forever looks like. Cade. I closed the front door, dropped my key into the lockbox the realtor had left for the new owners, and walked to my truck. The sun was going down over the runway. A Cessna 150 was doing touch and goes on 17. Somebody's kid was riding a bike along the taxiway edge. Normal air park evening. Normal life going on while a family blew apart, and nobody outside these gates would ever know. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. I drove south toward San Antonio. I'd already submitted my transfer request to the carrier's compliance office in Raleigh, North Carolina, weeks earlier. Timed so the approval came through right around closing. Different state, different life. Raleigh was flat and green and didn't remind me of anything. I rented a place near the airport, 15-minute commute. Started work the second week of November. New team, new facility, new aircraft fleet to audit. Nobody knew my family. Nobody asked why I'd transferred. The kind of fresh start that doesn't feel dramatic, just quiet. Just mine. I changed my phone number, closed old email accounts, deactivated every social media profile, updated my mailing address to a P.O. box. If anyone tried to track me from San Antonio to Raleigh, they'd hit a wall. That was the point. The work kept me busy through the holidays. Thanksgiving was takeout Thai food and a football game. Christmas was a long run and a steak I cooked myself. New Year's was nothing. I don't mean that sadly. I mean I did nothing, and it was exactly what I needed. January brought information I didn't ask for. A former air park neighbor, a guy I'd been friendly with, emailed my work address, the only contact he still had. The binder had been found by the new owners during their move-in walkthrough. They'd called the realtor, thinking it was leftover closing paperwork. "There's a binder on the counter," the wife had said. "Looks like it belongs to the previous family." The realtor called my parents. Dad drove over and picked it up. According to my former neighbor, Dad sat in his truck in the new owner's driveway for 45 minutes before driving away. Just sat there. Engine running. Reading, presumably. Or trying to figure out how a kid he'd treated like background noise for 19 years had built a 60-page case file documenting exactly how invisible they'd made him. Lennox married Kellen in mid-December. Backyard ceremony at his parents' house in Cedar Park. About 50 people. The reception was potluck. Lennox posted a single photo with the caption, "Not what we planned, but grateful for everyone who showed up when it mattered." Nobody mentioned me. I'd been erased from the narrative completely, which was exactly what she'd asked for. Mom and Dad were renting in Pflugerville. No runway, no hangar, No air park address. Dad's truck sat in a regular driveway next to a regular mailbox on a regular street. For a man who'd spent 20 years as the guy on Taxiway Charlie, the loss of that identity hit harder than the money. Lennox, per my former neighbor, was not doing great. The wedding she'd dreamed about for years had been downgraded to a potluck. The hangar home she'd planned to eventually inherit was owned by strangers. Her social media had gone quiet. Kellen's loan officer's salary wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd built her brand around. I didn't feel satisfaction reading that email. Didn't feel guilt either. Just nothing. The kind of nothing you feel when you finally stop checking a bank account that never had anything in it. I emailed him back. Appreciate the update. I'm good out here. Take care. And I meant it. Every word. February, March, April. I settled into Raleigh's rhythm. Joined a running group at Umstead State Park on Saturdays. Got pulled into a side project auditing maintenance records for a fleet acquisition. My supervisor, a former Navy mechanic, told me my documentation standards were annoyingly thorough, and then promoted me to lead the new fleet's compliance integration. Spring turned warm early in North Carolina. Azaleas everywhere. I was at work on a Monday in April when my office phone rang. Front desk. There's a woman here asking. Says she's family. My chest tightened for 1 second. Then it passed. Tell her I'm unavailable. Let security know I'm not expecting visitors. She left after 20 minutes. I didn't ask what she looked like, but Lennox had tracked me to Raleigh, probably through my carrier's website, which listed office location, and she wasn't the type to accept a closed door. She wanted an audience. She always wanted an audience. The opportunity came 3 weeks later, and it came because of my former neighbor. He'd mentioned in a follow-up email that the air park was hosting its annual spring fly-in, aircraft displays, vendor booth, pancake breakfast, community barbecue, open to current and former residents. I hadn't planned to go, but my carrier needed someone to attend an EAA regional safety seminar being held that same weekend at a field outside San Marcos. I volunteered. Professional reason, legitimate travel. And when I was done Saturday afternoon, I drove the 40 minutes to the air park, not for the fly-in, because my former neighbor had offered to give me a box of tools I'd left in his garage 2 years ago. I pulled through the gate. My old code had long been deactivated, but he cleared me as a guest. Parked near the community pavilion. Same Edison lights from Lennox's engagement party, now strung between vendor booths. Same stone wall. The fly-in was winding down. Maybe 60 people still milling around. A few experimentals and a restored stagger wing sat on the ramp, wings glinting in the late afternoon sun. The HOA president holding court near the pancake station, talking to someone about transponder regulations with the intensity of a man who truly believed this was the most important conversation happening anywhere on Earth. I found my former neighbor at his hangar, grabbed the tools, and was loading them into my truck when I heard her voice behind me. Are you kidding me right now? Lennox. Standing on the taxiway in a sundress and designer sunglasses, pushed up on her head, arms crossed, jaw set. Kellen was 10 feet behind her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. I closed the tailgate, turned around, said nothing. You have the nerve to show up here? Her voice carried. A few heads turned near the pavilion. She wanted that. After what you did to this family? After you ruined my wedding? I leaned against the truck bed. Let her go. That binder was psychotic, Cade. Keeping a list of every time you felt slighted? You need help. Seriously. A few more people had drifted closer. The HOA president set his plate down. You done? I asked. No, I'm not done. You owe mom and dad an apology. You owe me an apology. You took everything from us because you couldn't handle not being the favorite. I pushed off the truck. Stood straight. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Lennox, you asked me to disappear forever. Those were your exact words. Mom and dad sat there and agreed. I did what you asked. The house sold because you refused a fair buyout. The wedding collapsed because mom and dad chose to fund your party instead of honoring a legal obligation. Every single thing that happened to you goes back to a choice you made. She opened her mouth. I kept going. I'm not apologizing. I'm not coming back. I'm not arguing about this in a parking lot at a fly-in. You got what you wanted. So did I. I walked to the driver's side of my truck. You're going to die alone, she called after me. Not a threat, a wish. The kind of thing people say when they've got nothing left and they know it. I opened the door, looked back at her one last time. At Kellen, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched, looking like a guy who realized way too late what he married into. At the hangar home down taxiway, Charlie that now had a different family's name on the mailbox. At the HOA president, watching silently from the pavilion, plate of pancakes going cold. Maybe, I said. But you already practiced disappearing me. You're just mad it worked. I got in the truck, started the engine, and pulled out through the gate. Didn't look in the rearview mirror. The gate closed behind me with a clank that sounded exactly like what it was, a lock sliding into place. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.